Hello again. My name is Mike. I'm a chaplain with Trinity of Christ Ministries. I am also a relationship coach specializing in intimacy and infidelity. And today we're going to talk a little bit about resolving conflict. We often face conflict in our marriage because we're all different people. We're all created different. We have different personalities, different needs. So by resolving conflict, we can do a lot to make our lives a lot easier and possibly avoiding something like an affair or, a divorce, uh, because we can't get along with each other. So, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things we can do to avoid conflict so that we can have a better marriage and a better relationship. And I think most people would like to have a better relationship with their spouse, but sometimes we just lack the communication skills to accomplish this. So, what do we know about conflict? What can we do to help conflict in our marriage with our spouse? Well, 75% of arguments can be avoided by communicating. Uh, this has been shown time and time again in statistics to where it's just a failure to communicate with each other about what the other person really needs. And if we can communicate, we could solve so many arguments before they even start by just simply communicating with each other about what our needs are. Um, the truth is, most couples never learn to communicate. Even some couples have been together 50 years and have never really learned to communicate with each other. One of them withdraws, the other one is very proactive. One of them is, uh, very talkative, very argumentative. The other one just kind of sits there and goes, whatever, you know. And while some marriages can survive that, there's lots of marriages that can't. So learning to communicate is one of the best tools we have for resolving conflict. Uh, there are two types of communication. There is your concerns and their concerns. And we have to understand that both of those concerns are important. Uh, one of us's concerns shouldn't be any more valid than the other one's concerns. Um, we need to bring up issues before they evolve into an argument. If we talk about issues before they become an argument, lots of times we can avoid that conflict in our marriage. So find a good time to bring it up when your partner is relaxed and not stressed out, and address it beforehand. And then lots of times a conflict can be avoided by doing this. Uh, don't forget to express yourself. It's okay to express yourself. This is what is lacking in a lot of marriages. People tend to withdraw into themselves instead of expressing how they feel to their spouse. Express yourself, express your feelings, your thoughts, your concerns. By doing this, you open up the door for communication. It lets this other person know what you need, what you're expecting, what you would like to happen. And you will find lots of times that it's really not that big an issue for a lot of people. So expressing yourself is very important. Um, one thing to do is avoid defensiveness. Uh, we all can get defensive very easy. We draw back and we want to protect ourselves. That's very common. We don't like somebody attack. We perceive attack. So when we perceive attack, we automatically withdraw, and we have that fear, flight, or freeze response that everyone has when they're faced with what they perceive as danger. And it we draw back and get defensive. uh so try to avoid using certain terms or words that provoke a defensive response from your spouse. For instance, try not to use the words never or always. For example, uh, a wife might say, "You always leave your muddy shoes by the front door. You never put your shoes where they belong." This is going to invoke a defensive response from the husband because he's human. And so he's going to feel like he's been attacked. He's going to have to defend himself. This leads to an argument. So instead of using it that way of never and always, you might approach it by saying, "Honey, when you leave your shoes in front of the door, it gets the floor dirty, and it looks like I haven't cleaned, and I would appreciate if you would, put them in the shoe rack." And if you say it in a tender way, that something is not so defensive, something or offensive to him, that he doesn't become so defensive. So it works the same way with a wife. You know, "Honey, I noticed you, did this," and you say, "While I appreciate what you do, I really would like if we could do this way instead occasionally to try to, have some variety." Say, this will come off as appreciative and a request instead of being so defensive, making her feel defensive like she has to defend herself. So it's all about the way we communicate, the way we speak to each other. That's really important. Um, we have to make sure that you criticize behavior, not the person. That's very important. You criticize the behavior, not the person. For instance, the wife spent a couple of hours making a nice dinner, and the husband was late because he stopped by the golf store to look at some new clubs that he likes. Now he's 30 minutes late for dinner, and it's sitting on the table that the wife has spent many hours preparing to have a nice meal. Now, instead of yelling at him when he comes through the door to put him in defense mode, and it can be hard to do, I know, because we all have tempers, whether we like to admit it or not. We can all get angry. But instead of yelling at him when he comes home, how about saying, you know, "Honey, I spent, you know, 2 hours preparing this dinner, and it makes me feel unappreciated when you don't show up on time." Now that will have a much better reaction from him than start yelling at him when he walks through the door. Because what you're doing is you're appealing to his consciousness instead of his defensiveness. Because he's probably going to sit back and say, "Well, I guess that was kind of thoughtless of me. I probably should have, you know, went and looked at those golf clubs some other time. I'm sorry. I should have been here on time. I'll try to do better." That's probably more of the reaction you're going to get than if you start yelling at him as soon as he walks in because he was late. So again, this helps avoid conflict. Uh, Always show appreciation for each other in the things that you do for each other. Uh, if your wife made sure your favorite shirt was ironed before you went to work, don't just grab your shirt and walk out. Make sure you thank her for what she did for you. You thank you, oh, honey, I appreciate it so much. You iron my shirt. That's great. I don't have to do it now. I have more time or something like that. Or your husband does a little something for you. Maybe he, picks you up flowers or something like that. Or maybe he gave the kids a bath so you don't have to, show appreciation. So, well, thank you, honey. Thank you for doing that for me. It takes a lot off my plate. So by doing these things, it can go a long way, but don't praise someone just to get something you want. That's bad. That sends a bad message. You don't want to do that. So make sure that you stop talking and start listening to each other. That's important. Zip it and listen. Everybody wants to be heard. They may even be wrong, but even if they are, they still want somebody to hear their story. So listen. Um, Take time to talk. Set apart a time of the day that you can sit and talk to each other. That's very important. Um, Figure out what your triggers are. If your triggers are work or kids or bills, we all have triggers that we have that can make us angry and respond in a negative way. So it's important to figure out what those triggers are so you can avoid those triggers or avoid a conversation with your spouse when they're that having that trigger, they're at that place. So you can avoid the conflict by waiting to a better time to bring this up. Um, it's important to think before you speak because you may say something you're going to regret. Uh, Always trying to make sure that you're the one in the right. So you need to ask yourself, do I really want to, hurt my spouse and belittle them and make them feel bad just so I can win an argument? This is a very bad thing to do. Uh, it's disrespectful to them and it's pretty, pretty crappy on your part to do something like that to your spouse. So you're going to end up regretting it a lot of times by saying something you really didn't think about what you should have said. Uh, Try to avoid that because that creates a lot of animosity, a lot of resentment. So think before you speak. Uh, Another thing is minimizing their feeling on a particular subject. This is bad. Don't minimize your partner's feelings on something. Their feelings are just as valid as your feelings. So take the time to listen to their concerns and validate their concerns. Yes, honey, I can see why you feel that way. I can see that. I can see why that, would upset you. Uh, I can see your point of view on this, that you agree with that. Or, it's okay to disagree on some things. It doesn't mean you have to fight because you disagree on something. We're all different people. We all have our own opinions and viewpoints. So validate this person. Yes, you know, well, I was kind of upset that you forgot my birthday yesterday. And you say, "Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. I understand why you're upset. Yes, I agree. I'll try to do better next time." Uh, things like that. You don't minimize their feelings about something they feel about a certain way. Maybe somebody likes to play piano and you hate piano, but you don't minimize their desire to do it because that's their right. That's their desire. So you have to be supportive. So that covers it for this video. Thank you for watching. You can find us at trinityofchrist.org. and here on YouTube, and I'll see you next time.